If you only recently started practicing real estate law in Ontario, you might not be totally familiar with the Law Society of Ontario's Form 9D, otherwise known as the Investment Authority. Form 9D is used in private mortgage transactions to ensure comprehensive documentation and client awareness when a lawyer asks for or receives money from a lender. This form helps maintain transparency and proper record-keeping in such transactions. Form 9D must be completed and signed by each lender before the first advance of money to or on behalf of the borrower. It includes various points that must be addressed, with NA to be noted if a point is not applicable. There are some circumstances when this form is not intended to be used. If a particular exception applies, pursuant to subsection 2 of section 24 of Bylaw 9, then a Form 9D is not required. Rather than listing the details of all of those exceptions here, we encourage you to read the article we published in our help documentation. If you're watching this video on YouTube, you can find a link to that article in the description of this video. Assuming that none of the exceptions apply, you'll need to go ahead and prepare your Form 9D, and TrustReq is here to help. Form 9D is written from the point of view of the investors, using words like I or we when giving instructions to the lawyer. The LSO's website instructs you to have your client complete the form. We at TrustReq would add that some investors might not necessarily know how to complete some parts of a Form 9D on their own, so we've designed some of the fields to be filled out by you. However, to ensure that you follow the LSO's instructions, we suggest either having the investor participate in this process with you, or that you carefully review all of the contents of the form with them before obtaining their initials or signatures on the form. The Form 9D is primarily divided into 3 parts. Part A is called Details about the investment. Part B is called Conditions, and Part C is called Disclosure. TrustReq will walk you through filling out Part A, but Part B and Part C require the investors to provide informed instructions and sign their initials and signatures. Consequently, when you complete all of the steps in the form generation process, the final generated form will still require you to properly communicate and collaborate with the investors to ensure that your Form 9D is completed correctly. All right, with all of that context out of the way, let's jump into how to generate a Form 9D. Starting from your TrustReq dashboard, click Fill Out New Form on the left-hand sidebar. You will now see an area appear where you can choose what type of form you intend to fill out. On the center of the page, click the drop-down menu and then click Form 9D. You will now see a button that says Start Filling Out Form 9D. Click that button. On the following page, you'll see a 25-step process, but rest assured that you'll be able to generate your form within just a few minutes, as each step is quite short and straightforward. A Form 9D is a very detailed document, and we've designed our workflow to ensure that you don't miss important details. The first step simply requires you to enter the client's matter number. If you haven't created a matter yet, you can do so by clicking on the icon next to the search box. Step 2 requires you to indicate the responsible lawyer on the file. Alternatively, you can input the name of your law firm instead. Step 3 requires you to enter the full legal name and address of each investor. The address box is powered by Google Maps, so the field will autofill with suggested addresses as you type. When you've entered the relevant information, click Add to List. You can add as many investors as needed. If you make a mistake, you can click the Remove Last Entry button. At Step 4, indicate the dollar amount of the mortgage investment. At Step 5, you'll see a little preview of what the beginning of your Form 9D will look like. At this step, you'll need to indicate the name and address of each borrower. The user experience is designed the same as when you were adding the investor's details. At Step 6, if there are any guarantors, then each guarantor's name and address is required. If there are no guarantors, then you can skip this step. At Step 7, you'll need to provide the legal description and municipal address of the real property. You can typically find the legal description by looking at the property's parcel register. At Step 8, you'll need to specify the type of property, such as residential, vacant land, or something else. Step 9 is a two-parter. You'll need to specify the principal amount of the mortgage or charge, but you'll also need to specify the amount of loan money to be advanced by the investor. This is because these two pieces of information are contained within the same numbered paragraph in Form 9D, so we reflected that format in our workflow. At step 10, you'll be prompted to indicate the rank of the investor's mortgage or charges. For example, you might write something like second, after payout and discharge of existing second mortgage. At step 11, indicate the percentage that the investor's investment represents compared to the total loan to the borrower. For example, if the borrower isn't borrowing from any other sources and the investor's funds represent the entire loan, then the percentage would be 100%. The input field will allow you to indicate up to 4 decimal places to ensure that the percentage is as precise as possible. At step 12, simply indicate the approximate value of the property. At step 13, you'll need to describe what means were used to determine the approximate value of the property. For example, you might say that an arm's length sale of the property for a specific sum of money was used to determine the approximate value. At step 14, indicate what percentage of the property's value is mortgaged or encumbered, including the investor's mortgage amount. For example, you might say something like 66% after payout of an existing second mortgage. At step 15, specify the term of the loan. This period will typically be represented in years, but you have the option to use either months or years as your preferred unit of time. At step 16, indicate the due date of the loan. At step 17, indicate over how many years is the loan amortized. At step 18, you'll need to indicate the interest rate as well as how it is calculated. This can be done by simply filling in the blanks in the sentence that you see appear on the screen. An example of a complete sentence might say, the interest rate is 5.5%, calculated semi-annually, not in advance. At step 19, enter the particulars regarding the amounts and due dates of payments of principal and interest. For example, you might say $380.70 on the first day of each month. At step 20, enter the particulars, if any, of amounts of any bonus or holdback or any other special terms. If this doesn't apply, then you can click Not Applicable below. At step 21, indicate the mortgagees. If there is more than one mortgagee, then add each one at a time. Remember that the mortgagee is the lender. This is the entity providing the funds via a mortgage to buy a home. In the LSO's sample Form 9D, the mortgage is registered in the name of the investor indicated earlier in the sample. At step 22, if an administrative fee applies to the installment payments, then specify the details. This can be done by simply filling in the blanks of the sentence that you see on the screen. If there is no such fee, then you can click Not Applicable. At step 23, if the mortgage is held in trust, then specify the dates on which payments are to be made by the trustee to the investor. If this does not apply, then you can click Not Applicable. At step 24, enter the particulars of disbursements made for legal, brokerage or other fees, or commissions in connection with the placement of the loan, including the names of recipients and amounts paid. For example, you might say, legal fees of $400, disbursements of $70, HST of $53.30 payable to Leslie Lawyer. If this does not apply, then you can click Not Applicable. When you're ready, you can proceed to the final step, where you will see a preview of your Form 9D. You can also view a sample Form 9D from the LSO's website by clicking on the link in the corner of the page. If you notice anything in the preview that needs to be changed, then remember not to press your browser's back button, since this will terminate your form before it is completed, and you'll need to start again from the beginning. Instead, look for the back button located in the bottom left-hand corner of the page. At the bottom of the preview, you'll notice that there are a number of boxes that will require the investor's initials and signature. We'll talk about that in a moment. After you click Finish in the bottom right-hand corner, this Form 9D will appear in your primary dashboard along with your other Form 9 records. However, it's important to remember that there are additional tasks that must be performed in order to be compliant with Bylaw 9. Let's talk about those additional steps now. From your TrustReq dashboard, click on the button that says Form 9D, 9E. Then find the relevant Form 9D in the table that appears. Then click on View Details. On the following page, you'll see the form that you generated, along with some additional options. To obtain the necessary initials and signatures from the relevant parties, click the button that says Export to PDF, and then download your Form 9D. You'll notice that the exported version of your document is visually quite different from the more simplistic preview that you were previously viewing. This is because we wanted to help you communicate a polished and professional experience for your clients. To be clear, the design of the exported document is not a standardized publication of the LSO and is merely our own stylistic design. That being said, all of the content in the document has been carefully crafted pursuant to the LSO's sample documentation. After you've downloaded your PDF, you can then use whichever e-signature software you typically use, such as DocuSign, Adobe Acrobat, or Clio. At this time, this step is done outside of the TrustReq platform. That being said, once you have a fully signed copy of the document, you can click the button that says Upload a signed Form 9D, and your document will be stored for record-keeping and auditing purposes. We hope you've enjoyed this tutorial about creating a Form 9D using TrustReq. Thanks for watching.